I can help you get started keeping bulletproof books for property flippers and owners in a matter of hours, not days, not weeks, but hours. Follow along with me and I'll explain exactly how this works. First of all, what are bulletproof books? Bulletproof books, simply stated, means that you've put the books together in such a way that you can prove every number that's on a balance sheet or a P&L that you've put together. And what you can derive from that is the fact that any other reports you run, driven by the same data that's used to put together to compile a balance sheet or P&L, is going to be just as reliable because it's the same data put together with the same audit trail in mind. My name is Seth David, and in the beginning of my accounting career, and then later on as well, I've worked as an auditor. I know how they think, I know what they're looking for, I know what causes questions to be raised in their minds, and I know how to answer those questions even when they are raised. And for that matter, I sat down one day years ago and thought to myself, thinking like an auditor, what would I do on the other side of that? How might I put together a set of books that's consistent with being confident that I could prove every number to the most scrutinizing auditor who might come in looking to pick apart my work? You see, this all starts with property owners and flippers with the purchase of a piece of real estate. Now, if I'm a flipper, I'm going to buy that property, then fix it up, which means I have construction to be concerned with, construction expenses, and then I'm going to sell the finished property. In the case of a rental property, I'm going to buy the property and rent it out. The accounting for property flippers and owners is complex. This is not the sort of thing you're just going to figure out. You're going to need some help along the way in order to learn how to do this and do it properly so that you can take on clients. If I'm assuming I'm talking to the bookkeeper or accountant looking to serve the property owners. If you're a property owner looking to take this course because you just want to learn how to do it yourself, stick around. But I am going to teach this from the perspective of the accountant or bookkeeper who is serving that property owner. You have to understand the rules for the right accounting treatment. If you want to put together bulletproof books, meaning you can prove every number, the first rule of doing this is that things have to be treated properly. The construction costs for a property that you're going to flip needs to go on the balance sheet so that you can accumulate all those costs, and then when the time comes to sell it, you can figure the gain or loss on sale properly. Okay. By contrast, the rental property side of this is where you're going to track everything on the profit and loss because that's the appropriate accounting treatment for the owner of the property where the rental income is theirs and the expenses are theirs to incur. Now, there are many business models that as a bookkeeper or accountant you can take on, simple service-based businesses where you probably can go, if you have the accounting fundamentals down, you can go in and figure this all out on your own. And the truth of the matter is that's a race to the bottom because what you're going to be doing in serving that kind of a niche is you're going to be competing on price because there's going to be lots and lots of people who can do this because it's not complex. One of the reasons I chose real estate and other niches to focus on for when I worked as an accounting professional doing the accounting work, and certainly now as I develop courses and produce courses in these subjects, one of the main reasons I choose the areas that I choose is because they are complex, which means it's basic economics, supply and demand. It means if you can learn these skills, if you take the time, invest the time and the money, frankly, to learn these skills, then you'll be in much higher demand, which means you can charge more. A lot of bookkeepers and accountants out there are struggling. They're working crazy hours and not making nearly enough money, especially when they balance that against the number of hours they're putting in. And that's because they're in that race to the bottom, serving the simple service-based type businesses that, you know, on some level, almost anybody with a little bit of bookkeeping training can handle. Now, here's what happens when you learn to put together a set of bulletproof books, which I'll remind you means you have confidence in those numbers. And that's the key right there, is it will boost your confidence because you'll know that a business owner, an auditor, somebody from a bank, anybody who for whatever reason comes in wanting to scrutinize the books to make sure that your numbers are solid, you'll go in there with confidence, practically begging them to challenge you because you know that you're able to drill into every number and show exactly where that number came from. And if necessary, even provide whatever third-party documentation you might need in order to show, for example, that the mortgage payable balance that you show on your balance sheet agrees to the bank's statement as of the end of a given month, right? So it comes down to that level of detail that you're learning. So number one, it boosts your confidence, right? Which is going to make it much easier for you when you're talking to prospective clients. You'll do a lot better job of selling people on the fact that you know what you're doing. They'll just hear it in your voice. They'll recognize this person is clearly confident that they can do this job, and clearly it's not something that just anybody can do. So that's number one. Number two is in how, as I mentioned, you're going to be able to actually prove your number. So if somebody does come in to scrutinize, you're going to say, well, let's look at the record, and you're going to run the balance sheet and you're going to drill in. And as I said, you'll be able to show the list of transactions that add up to your number that prove its accuracy. And then, as I said, you'll be able to pull third-party documentation such as a bank statement to prove that you reconciled your balances correctly. And one of the first things we teach in Bulletproof Bookkeeping, the Mastery course, and I'll remind you of it here, is that when we do reconcile bank statements, we have a zero materiality threshold, meaning we do not tolerate even a penny plug number. There's no reason for it. It's simple math. We start with a beginning balance. We add whatever came in. We subtract whatever came out. That gets us to our ending balance. And while a small amount like a penny or $1 or even $100 might seem immaterial, the truth is buried inside of that number could be two very significant opposing numbers. And so bottom line, one of the first rules that makes books bulletproof is the fact that we do not tolerate any plug numbers on a bank reconciliation, which provides us with the assurance we know that every single thing that went through the bank statement is there on the books. And for that matter, we can quickly identify anything that's on the books that doesn't show up on the bank statement that never did clear. Now imagine if you, as a bookkeeper or accountant serving real estate clients, specifically property flippers and owners, imagine if you could keep the same amount of income but put in half the hours. Does that sound like a pipe dream? It probably does to a lot of people, but here's the reality. And I've already told you why I think it's very realistic to think that you could build a business on this basis, learning how to do the accounting and bookkeeping for a niche like this. Again, first and foremost, high demand, short supply. Not as many people out there willing to do it, let alone knowing how to do it, as there are people who need the help. And again, with your confidence skyrocketing the way it is, and because of that supply-demand equation, you're going to be able to charge a lot more per client on average versus somebody who's serving a simple service-based business. And what that means is you can double your revenues, you know, and serve half the number of clients at the same time and get the same amount of revenue working half the amount of time. Realistically, at that point, you have to decide what you want to do with that extra free time. You can take on more clients and scale and hire people and train them the way you'll now be trained in order to do the accounting with great accuracy, with bulletproof confidence that you can prove every number. You train people, you scale, so it makes for a much more scalable business. What it also means, and I want to be upfront with you about this, is you will need to invest more time up front right now in learning how to do this, but even as you take on each new client, there's going to be a lot more work than a simple business in terms of just getting them set up and onboarded, but it's worth it. Because once you get them set up and onboarded, then you're going to take advantage of things like bank feed rules and all kinds of other efficiencies that you can create using the automations that are available so that you can scale. Now, in the next video, I'm going to show you exactly how to get started. The very first steps for how to get started keeping bulletproof books for property owners and flippers. And as with every new course that I produce, I'd love to take on 1,000 people, but I always like to make it a point when I first launch a course to really handhold and take the first group of people through, which means as part of the launch here, we're going to include some live Q&A. I'm going to put everybody into a Slack workspace so that you can ask questions and get them answered timely, so that bottom line, even as you start taking on clients of your own, you'll never have to get stuck on anything. You'll be able to ask whatever questions you want, and I'll be able to get in there and answer them. I'm usually pretty quick about answering them. My guarantee is within one business day. So worst case, you ask a question on a Friday, I may not get back to you till Monday. I often will respond on a Saturday, but I never want to promise that. The reality is it's probably not going to be more than 100, maybe 150 people that I can take on this first go around, where all these bonuses will be included. After that, the course will be available to anybody, but without the live Q&A, and the Slack community will be available, but again, not with quite as much handholding as I want to be able to give to the first round of people who sign up and sort of put their confidence in me as I launch this brand new course of mine. So I hope you've enjoyed this video as kind of a starter to give you an idea of what this is really all about. Hopefully what you've taken away mainly is understanding what it means to have bulletproof books, understanding some of the high-level nuances and complexities that are involved with accounting for property owners and flippers, and ultimately why I think it's a really good choice for accountants and bookkeepers to serve as a niche because of, as I mentioned, the high demand, short supply ratio of, people who need the accounting and bookkeeping done for them versus people who are properly trained and willing to serve those people. And in another day or two, I'll go live with the next video that, like I said, will show you exactly how to get started keeping bulletproof books for property owners and flippers. And then if need be, like I said, you'll be able to pull third